Well, hello, hello. Thank you for tuning in. And it is your girl, Sean LeRae. And welcome to Boss Talk LA. That's bold, one of a kind, sensational superstars. And that's each and every one of you. So I'm glad to have you back this week. And we are always excited to see you on a Wednesday. So I want you to take a moment and go ahead and put that link out there, post it on your social media, send it out to a friend, and let's get some more people in here to join us tonight. And remember to hit that little subscribe button and then hit the bell so that you can be notified each time that we go live. And we're here every Wednesday night, 6 o'clock Pacific time, 7 o'clock Mountain time, 8 o'clock Central time, and 9 o'clock on that East Coast. So go ahead, send it out there and let me know where you are watching from. We are in the Los Angeles area. So very excited to be here with you all again tonight on a Wednesday. And it's Wellness Wednesday. And so it's important that we remember how to take a moment and pause every day. But particularly on a Wednesday, I say, because it's hump day, it's right in the middle. And so this can help us to get through to the end of the week when we're right in the middle and we're just waiting for that weekend to come, because, I am one who lives for the weekend. So let's just take a deep breath together today and just breathe in. When you take that breath in, expand your belly. And then when you exhale, let your belly contract. So do it with me. Here we go. Breathing in and exhaling. Let's do that again. Breathing in and exhaling. And let's do one more. If you're just join us on this last breath. Here we go. Breathing in and exhaling. I hope that you allowed your shoulders to drop and your fingers to feel free, and just like roll your neck a little bit. It gives you an opportunity to just kind of reset after a long day doing what you do. So we're glad that you're here with us tonight. I'm very excited about this show. This show has been a long time coming. And when we got here last week, we had a little technical difficulty, but I'm so grateful that my guest was able to come back this week. Glad that you all are back with us. If you know somebody who was here last week and they're not in right now, go ahead and remind them, send them that link and tell them to get on in here and join us. So I want to tell you a little bit about my guest. And when she comes on, we'll talk more about how we met and how we know one another, because, I always like to share that with you all. So tonight, I'm very excited to bring to you Dr. Ishelle Williams. She's a licensed marriage family therapist and doctor of psychology with over 2 decades of experience helping people and systems heal without losing themselves in the process. Dr. Ishelle's work bridges personal restoration with structural change, whether she's supporting a therapist navigating burnout, a family rebuilding after disruption, or an organization overwhelmed by mission fatigue. She offers strategies rooted in clinical expertise, cultural fluency, and lived truth. Much of the work that Dr. Ishelle does is shaped by personal experience, growing up in a layered family systems, witnessing the weight that caregivers carry, and learning how to navigate leadership while healing herself. Through therapy, consulting, and training, she helps individuals, families, and professionals create sustainable shifts, ones that honor their story, reclaim their leadership, and bring clarity to what's next. So, Boss Talkers, without another word from me, please welcome back Dr. Ishelle Williams.
Hello, hello. How are we out there?
Hello. So good to have you back. Thank you for coming in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Couldn't wait to get here. I mean, again, like you said, it's been a long time in the making. So
Yeah.
happy to have it, to be doing this now.
Absolutely. And I'm just so grateful that you were a trooper and stuck it out with me.
Right. Well, we always got to give it another chance, right? So there's
That's
a lesson learned in every single thing. So it's most of the time it's in the reapproach, right?
right.
So we reapproach it again so we can get it right.
Exactly. Exactly. And just grateful that we get that opportunity, right?
Hmm.
Yes, yes. So one of the things, because you are in the helping profession like I am, I always like to know what brought you to this work.
A big piece of what brought me is just that personal experience. I can remember leaving home, going away to college, and kind of sitting on a spring break. So, sometime in April, years and years ago, I won't say how many, but just kind of sitting there and feeling a weight and not understanding how to put any words to it. So, spring break, I was living on my own and, hadn't moved off the couch in a couple of days. Of course, I bathed, but not much more movement after that. So I called my mom and I said, what, something's going on and I'm not exactly sure what it was or what it is. And she says, maybe you need to talk to somebody. And I said, well, maybe I do. And that was the best thing that she could have done for me,
Wow.
right? So you talk about one of the gifts that is sustainable throughout your lifetime. Maybe you need to talk. And talk is what I did, and just being able to find my voice and
Mm,
being able to look at the work from a different perspective. And I said to myself, if I could do that for someone else and help them transform in that way, then I would be doing fulfilling work. And that's what I pursued after that. Some years after, but that was the
yeah.
pursuit.
Wow. I love that. And I love that you were in tune with yourself in such a way that you knew something was off. You couldn't name it, right? And then
Yeah.
you had a mother, of course, the wisdom of a mom, right? Maybe you need to talk to somebody. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. And that's also rare for Black families and some other families of color, because many times we don't believe in sitting down and talking to someone. So that was rather insightful for your mother as a Black woman to be like, we need to go somewhere for this. We need to look outside ourselves. I love
Yeah.
it.
And I
What?
don't know that
Go
I
ahead.
was gonna say I don't know that she knew exactly what she would do, what she was kind of offering up,
Mhm.
because I mean, again, we're just like every other Black family. What goes on here stays here. That is what we were taught and what was preached forever and ever. But just the idea that there may be some help, because she understood that she may not be able to give me what I needed. So
Mhm.
maybe you need to talk to somebody. It was kind of like, well, where do I go?
Right.
She's like, somebody, and maybe that somebody was someone other than her. So that was really brave on her
Mhm.
own behalf,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what were you pursuing in school before this happened, and when you made the shift, or you saw that later you wanted to make the shift?
So just like most people that go to school, I knew I wanted to go. I didn't know what I wanted to study. My major ended up being human development. By the
Ah.
time I had to declare that, what counselors like, so what are you going to major in? And I said, well, what do all these classes add up to be? And then that's what I'll major in. But it was a lot of psychology, all the ologies, right? Psychology, anthropology, sociology,
Right.
all of this. And once I kind of got in the seat, right, in a philosophy class, there was some aha moments and just kind of blow your mind, like, okay, in a psychology class. And then once the African American studies classes came, I was like, okay, I'm sold.
Yeah.
So that Pan African studies, the African American mixed with that psychology, I said, okay. So it was to understand me first as a person
Mhm.
in order to get to the next role, right? I talk about being a person first and a professional second. So
Yeah.
who you meet is me. And then I layer it with everything else that I bring in and the knowledge I have.
I love that. So now, where did you go to school for your bachelor's?
Cal State Long Beach.
Ah, okay, okay.
Yeah.
My sister went there. So,
I'm a 49er.
yes. Now, are you a native Californian?
Yes, born and raised. They've lived in Altadena all my life. The only time that I didn't live in Altadena was when I was in school in Long Beach for 5 years.
Okay.
But other than that, it's been Altadena. So,
Mm,
it's very funny that you don't meet many of us. But when
right.
you meet those tried and true, you're like, oh, okay, you really been here. I really been here.
I really have. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Yes. It's funny. My husband is a native. California, and he grew up in the Lakeview Terrace Pacoima area, which is where we live now.
Okay.
So there he is. He says, well, she's back. I hope this goes well. Absolutely. So far, so good.
So far, so good.
And usually when we're going to have that problem, it starts at the very beginning. So we have made it through. I pray it and I hope. Well, thanks for tuning in, honey. So I always like to talk about how I meet my guests. So ours was a very meant to be type of meeting because I first saw you and your amazing young man, your son, on television. And I was watching Spectrum News 1, and Debbie Allen, who we all love, was being, I think it was a tribute to her. Wasn't it?
So she was celebrating or just celebrated 25 years with her studio, right? With the dance studio being open. So that was highlighting that 25th anniversary.
Yes. Okay. And I first met Debbie Allen in New York when I was about 19 years old. So that was very full circle. My nieces danced with Dada from the time they were like 4 and 6 or something until way long, and now they're like they're both 30 years old. So she's been around there. Yeah. So I kept during that whole show, I kept seeing this vibrant young man just dancing his heart out and just having so much fun. And they talked about him, and then they mentioned that he had lost his home in the fire. And then I think they showed you and your family too, right? On the show today, right? And I was just, my heart was touched, and I was like, wow, I would love to talk to her. And so I go then a couple of days later, even, or a week or so, I don't know exactly how long, but shortly thereafter, I attend a birthday party for my husband's friend, for his grandmother's 99th birthday party. And I happened to be seated next to a lady who knew you. And that even came up randomly because I asked her, I was like, so what do you do? And she said, oh, she teaches. And I said, well, what do you do in your free time? She goes, well, one of the things I do is I help out this mom. I help her drive her son to dance class. And I said, oh, that's cool. I said, I saw this young man. He was a dancer, and he was so vibrant and just energetic and just a lovely young man. And I said, and his family, and she goes, wait, that's him. That's
what are the odds, right? Only thing you got to do is ask, right? That's all you got to do. It's like, I want to meet them. Okay.
Yes, exactly. And then just who knows how, but it's coming. It is definitely coming. And so she said, oh, I'll let her know. I told her I want to have her on my show. And she goes, I'll let her know. And about a week or so, you called. And I was like, I love when God does those things, right? He just puts it all together.
Yeah.
Yes. And so here we are. And of course, we've chatted quite a bit in the interim of that. But I want to talk a little bit about, like, you guys lost your home in the Altadena fires. And, that alone is just, I don't even know where to begin with that. But I do wonder what was that like growing up there, that being your home, like really your home.
Yeah.
And then finding yourself in the midst of that. Crazy.
Well, growing up there, my mother owned her home there. My grandmother also owned a home that was right around the corner, maybe about, 4 or 5 minutes walking distance, and just being a really close-knit family. So most of the time, and what you understand about people from Altadena is, you don't move, you don't go anywhere. You're like, I'm standing here, I'm holding my ground, right? And there's a lot of generational families and people that live super close to one another. So you talk about the impact of the fire. When you are that close and one person loses something, but y'all are just steps away from one another, then the likelihood that everybody loses everything is very likely, and that's our story, right? I lived on a particular street. My mom lived on the backside of my wall, 3 houses up, And if you went to the edge of my street, maybe about 5 houses in, then my grandmother's home, which my sister lived in, was there. And then maybe about 2, 3 more minutes down the road, my father's mother lived in a home that was there, some bungalows. And then it's like everybody, maybe 2 or 3 more minutes down the street. So when that fire came through and it, claimed my mother's home, and very shortly after, and we don't really know how it, what the trajectory was, but claimed my home as well. And then it also claimed my sister's home and my grandmother's home. So that's four immediate family members. But each one of us, losing the dwelling and our community that we grew up in. So I think the loss is far more, greater than just the things, because people say, oh, it's just things, but it's far greater than the things, because it's the community and it's the people, and it is for sure the memories and the feeling that you get when you go home, and just the ability to like relax and take a load off. It's harder to find that feeling because I'm not able to go home no matter where I restart.
Right.
It's hard.
Yeah, because home is all of those things, all of those memories, all of that closeness, all of the legacy. And speaking of which, my brother Alan is in here. Hello, hello. He is Mr. Dina. Uh, he also
Hey, Alan.
he says we lost our family business. He did the oldest Black owned business in Altadena called the Little Red Hen, after 3 generations and 52 years as a family legacy. Yeah, and it's funny, when I went off camera, I was texting him, "Get in here." I was going to ask him, "What's your family business name?" Because I was going to tell you, and then I look up and he's right there.
Yeah. Well, and again, and that's just right around the corner, right?
Wow.
So, and not even 5 minutes from where I am, his business stood. And you
Mm,
think about, those are the things, those are the staples that you pass every day, right? You
mhm.
leave the house and there's only 1 or 2 directions that you're taking to go south, and you pass his business, right? And that family business. And look to, you felt great because you knew that, you know what I mean, that they were there, and
Yes.
that was a familiar place.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest piece, when you lose the community that
Mhm.
you're raised in, not just the things.
Right.
For me, I didn't own my home. I rented my home, but I was there 17 years.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
it was the halfway point from my grandmother's house to my mother's house. And when my grandmother stopped driving, she could come and take a break at my house. And that was super important,
Yeah.
just as community is built and that our family,
Mm.
we do that for one another. So I was going nowhere,
Yeah.
right? As that halfway point. Mhm.
Right. Yeah. And that is so important to consider, that, like you said, it's definitely more than the things, but there are tiny little things that you might not even think of, that become familiar, like walking past that building. Then you know how long you got till you get home. All of those kinds of little things that we just don't think about until they're gone, and in such a way. William says, you met her through a metaphysical operation that the Creator installed within our DNA, something we will eventually have to understand about, but I'll talk about this at another time. My husband is always talking about that kind of telepathic sense, and those kinds of things that God just instills in us, and we don't often know that it's there until it happens, and it happens all the time. It
Oh,
really,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I
So
think sometimes it's about how high you're vibrating, right? So
mm,
how in tune do you allow yourself to go?
exactly.
And I have many instances where people go, "Are you psychic?" And I
Yes.
said, "Well, the way that my creator made me, you might think that I am, and I was not in your living room this morning when you had that conversation. However, if I listen with my whole being, right,
Mm,
and if I connect to you, then I'm going to do and say the things that need to be said because it's for you."
that's right.
Okay?
That's
Yeah.
right. And I'm in tune with that. That's the key, is allowing yourself to almost to be a vessel when it
Yes.
comes to these things, and just being still and being present and being aware. and things will be downloaded into you that you need for such a time as that time. So whether it be sitting with clients as we do, or just being in tune with your family, with your friends and your people, it's also important. It's just being allowing yourself to be used in that
Yeah.
way. I love it. I love it. So take us back, Dr. Ishel, to the day of, like, did you wake up like a normal day? How did that play out for you all?
So I was actually working not at home. So I was actually spending my evenings, away because I was on a contract job. So I had been gone the night before and I was working 10 or 12-hour days, whatever it was. And I received a call from my son that evening. And maybe it was about 6 o'clock or so. And he says, Mom, you got to come home. There's a fire. And I said, like kind of like, you don't know what you mean. You know what you're talking about. I didn't hear about any fire. I've been watching the news. I've been kind of staying together with things. I knew the wind was really bad. So I just said, okay. And the friend that, that we met through, Shauna Ray, she was here with my son, or she was there at the house with my son. And I said, let me talk to her. So when I got her on the phone, she goes, yeah, there's a fire. We don't know exactly how bad, but we might have to evacuate. And I said, okay, cool. So grab his things, have him go to the garage, get a suitcase, and put those things together. And then I started directing her to where my important information was. To go in the office, do this. So did that. And I said, let me get off the phone with you. Let me call my sister, which is around the corner. I called her. I said, what's going on with this fire? And do I need to come home? And she says, yeah, right now. So I was maybe about 45 minutes to an hour away. I took that drive. And when I was coming up that 210 west, it was pitch black and there was a lot of like debris and things all over the freeway. Like trees were down and, everything. And I was just praying that I was going to be able to even get home to, finish or figure out, what I could actually grab for myself. So finally was able to get home. Most of the streets and things were black, but I still had power. And in fact, I had power until almost 1 a.m., which takes us from the fire starting on the 7th to the 8th, when we actually had to evacuate. So had power, all that, which was very deceiving. But you could look outside and see the ashes. You saw on the hill that it says red or orange is my jacket, just over the houses. So just really, really deceiving in a lot of ways, because it gave you a false sense of security. And because we've braved 4 fires previous, then you just don't know, right? We never had to evacuate. So I digress. Got the things together that I could get. And, we actually fell asleep. We fell asleep on this thing because we did not know. And my son was saying, we got to go. And I said, we'll be okay. We'll get the alert. We'll be ready to evacuate. I helped out a couple of the neighbors, some elderly neighbors on the sides of me, on both sides, helped them out, wanted to make sure. And then we fell asleep, put stuff in the car, did everything that we need to do. We were packed and ready. And at 3:30, he and I in the bed together got this alert, and we had to pack our, just got he and I and the dog, and, got in the car. But we started making phone calls because everybody is so close. Called my mom, called my sister, and we were talking about where we going and where we're meeting. And for myself, I was worried about, again, one of the elderly neighbors, because she has a daughter that's there with her. I called them 6 times. And I was on my way out the door when she finally answered the phone, and she also fell asleep.
Oh, boy.
Like a deep sleep.
Wow.
And I said, it's go time. We got to get out of here. And she's like, what? Like, I don't understand. Wake up, get your mom, let's go. I saw her a day later, and she cried, and we hugged, and she said, had you not called us, and woke me up.
Ooh, girl, stop.
We would have been there. We would have been at that house. So those things. But when I finally did leave, I had my, sisters on the phone, and we're all, kind of on 3-way. And she said, well, where are you? I said, I'm coming down the street. And she goes, well, I'm passing your street right now. I said, okay, I'm going to get in the back of you. And I just caravan with her. My mom is on the next block. We called, where are you? She was coming down her block. I said, Kim's there. I'm here. Get in the back of me. caravan down to my next sister's house. She's
Wow.
pulling out the driveway. And then I noticed, I said, okay, our other sister is not with us. So I said, you guys go on down to our friend's house a little more south, and I'm going to go get our other sister and her husband. So when they also fell asleep.
Oh my gosh.
I'm telling you, nobody really understood what was happening and the magnitude of things that were going on.
It was happening quickly too.
Very quickly. So got her up, and we went, and there's Huntington Hospital is a ways away, and that was a safe place. And once we got there, we saw other people gathered in that parking lot, just trying to figure out and strategize what was going to come next. No hotel, no plans, no nothing. And we just sat there for a couple hours until we could get a confirmation of a hotel, and then we headed out there. But
Right.
it was very, very deceiving. And by the time we were out at 3:30, what everything in me says that my friends had already lost their homes by the time, and they don't live very far away. They already lost their homes by the time I was trying to get out of there.
Ooh.
Because things were on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the presence of mind that you have to have in such, like, thank God for your presence of mind, like where, the checking in. I love the idea of you all coming together sort of in a caravan, like taking care of your neighbors. Like, it's all so surreal, even to hear about it now. And I think off camera, you mentioned that yesterday, was the
Monday
was the 6-month anniversary.
Yes.
Of this happening. Yeah. Wow. Because that 8th. Yeah. Wow.
And you just think about how time flies, and we feel like there's a little bit of distance from it, but it was yesterday.
Yeah.
As I sat and told the story, it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
When you go back and see the properties and see where it is, I mean, it's not as devastating as it was, because all of the rubble and most of the things are cleared out. They said they're about 97, 98% clear in terms of the land. But just because it looks better doesn't mean that you processed.
No.
Or that you're not still grieving, or that you've even started the grieving process, because many of us have not even started.
Yeah, because you're still in go mood, in do mode. Like, you have to do this and make sure that's done and make sure this is done. You have to make sure Braden's okay at all times. And there's so much. I think there's something so profound about what you said about, like, it looks better, right? Because we can spruce up. And so as a clinician, I'm thinking, yes, our clients come in and they look good. That woman is dressed to the nines, and her hair is just right, and her jewelry's in place, and all the things. But inside, there's so much turmoil and so much disappointment, hurt, and pain and trauma. And that's exactly what this is. My God.
Yeah. Well, isn't that a Black woman for you?
Yes, right? Indeed. Girl, they're right there. They're right.
You know what I mean? Present well, and on the inside, you just don't know exactly what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I said it may not have even begun.
Right.
And you're 6 months, 6 months in days away from an event.
Mm-hmm.
Then maybe it hasn't begun yet.
Right. Because there's so much. I mean, your entire 17 years of your life and before, because your family was there, even your mother was there long before you were there. Right?
Yeah, 56 years.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And you watch out for her because she's the matriarch, the strong Black matriarch. And to imagine what you're feeling at 17 years and your sisters, and then to have her have been there like the start of it all, it's just devastating. It really is. I think, so you went to a hotel, your family, you all went to a hotel. Were you all able to be in the same place?
Yes. So, well, all except for one of us. So the sister that I went to go get last, she and her husband were at a different hotel, as well as then my cousin, who lives around the corner from my sister, like 3 minutes. They were at a hotel together. Okay. So when you think about when we all were able to come back together, because we were in San Gabriel for a couple days and then we went to Studio City. When we all came together, there were 17 of us, 12 adults, 5 kids, 4 dogs, 2 cats, and a 47-year-old parrot named Hank. And if
not a 47-year-old parrot named Hank, girl.
He's as old as I am, but 47 years old. My mom said, "You better get that bird." Yes, my brother said he won't get in the cage. She said, "You better get that bird and put him in that cage." So, yes, Hank was not getting left behind. So you just think about even like what you look out for and who you look out for. You don't have no clothes, but you better get that bird.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. Something's just going no matter what. I
exactly. Leave the suitcase behind and get his cage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me get my bird.
Yeah.
Well, in as we talk about this, we talk about some of the things, the analogies, and what the therapist's view is like. But how did your background as a therapist influence how you've been processing this? Because sometimes all of that kind of goes out the window when it's us,
Yeah, for sure.
So
I think
managing that.
I think having to do self-care throughout my career and having it be second nature now, I don't have to think about what self-care looks like as much. Hear me say as much. I don't have to think about that as much. So then when something happens and you switch to autopilot, a part of the self-care is in autopilot as well, because I've been doing it so long.
Yeah.
I tell people, and then I went, okay, so we evacuated on a Wednesday. I went back to work on Monday. So I was back seeing clients 10 hours a day by Monday.
Wow.
I talk a little bit about the trauma of what it felt like to leave like the Studio City area when the Palisades fire was right over the 405, and having then to go east, right? And having to go all the way east as far as Norwalk, and having the police in caravan, 4 or 5 cars going in the opposite direction where I had to leave my son. I packed my bags every day for almost 2 weeks. I packed my bags every day and put them in my car to make sure that if they had to evacuate that hotel, then they wouldn't have to worry about my things. They could just get my son in his suitcases.
Wow. That is, that right there, that nugget right there is rich. I mean, that's the part that we don't think about, right? Those little nuances that we don't think about. Wow. William says that could be a lot of trauma, losing the community like that. Absolutely.
100%.
And when it is family, even the neighbors, right? Are, wow.
And, people ask about the immediate family, but what about those people that, those non-related family members? My play this, my play that, my auntie so-and-so, my cousin this, you know what I mean, that aren't blood related. And if I gave you that list and that number of things and people and dwellings, then you go, wow.
Yes.
And not just people a little bit, people that your whole life.
Whole life.
For their whole life. You burying their parents with them. You know what I mean? And they're taking care of mine when she's not well. So it's such a impactful experience that people, when you're in a community and you don't know your neighbor, there's something totally different than when you know every single one of your neighbors personally. There wasn't a time where I made a meal that I didn't call my neighbor and say, "Are you home? Because I'm going to send Braden over with food." And she's like, "What you cook?" So it's that kind of thing, that kind of experience, and it gets lost in, people going, "Oh yeah, you're from Altadena. I'm so sorry about your home."
Right. Recently I was telling you that they were doing this event over there in Pasadena, but a lot of Altadena people were there. My brother was there, Alan, because he films everything, any and everything. He has a show called Our Society. So shout out to Our Society and to Alan Shea, who is just everywhere documenting all things. And there were a lot of people who were from Altadena there, and just hearing them talk amongst themselves, and just getting to hear the pain still in the joy. Like they were all out there, we cha-chaing back, baby, but there was this air of, I see you, I see you,
Yeah.
and so that kind of community it's unparalleled. You can't make that up.
Yeah.
And I imagine that that is a legacy, even in the community that was impacted by the fire. That's a whole different kind of legacy that has been created out of legacy, because that's what it was in there. I have a musician friend who I used to go to Palm Drive or Palm Street in the hills over there to rehearse with him, and
Yep.
he's the guy that does my charts, and that his whole house was destroyed, his studio untouched, just steps away from the house,
Wow.
untouched. And so that's something that has been, people telling me about this house burned and the one next door still standing. Those are some of the stories I was hearing at the Paseo the other last week. It's just, there's no rhyme or reason.
No, I mean, when I tell you equal opportunity offender,
Yeah.
equal opportunity, no respect or person. Yeah, okay, I'll take that and not that. On my block, there were on the side of the street that I lived on, 3 houses at the top that were not touched, and every single thing above it, below it, around it, all gone. But these houses looked like they were power washed and wind dried. Not a bush at a place, and it would tell you beautiful. And on the opposite side of the street, at the end of the block, 3 houses again, untouched. Of course, now the smoke damage, all that stuff, but untouched, and
Wow.
everything else above it, below it, around it, gone.
Wow.
And one of the amazing things that you will notice if you go to Altadena now, they started to have all these little installations of little libraries.
Mm-hmm.
And they have all of these little libraries that stand. There's not one little library that I've seen that is burned down. Every single little library is still there, and it still has books in them.
Wow. Now that's
So,
almost scary when you think
yeah,
about, like, God,
yeah,
the history and the and the education and all of that. Wow.
yeah.
That's something. Have you heard of Harambe Ministries?
I have, and my son participated with Harambe lots.
Oh
Yeah,
my goodness. Well, then you might know Courtney. Do you know Courtney?
I do. Yeah,
Okay. So Courtney's dad
yeah.
is Wayne Lindsay. You know Wayne, his dad, because he's doing the music. He's the Courtney performed
No,
last.
I don't.
Courtney performed last week. His dad's
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay.
and we went to see Bethlehem this past what is it? No, December, and then 2 weeks later,
Okay.
gone.
Yeah. So Braden was in Bethlehem, not this past time, but the year previous.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Then I've seen video of that.
Yes. Look, again, all of these little, times where we come together. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. Let's see what Brother Allen is saying. Allen says, as a commitment to Altadena, the platform, our Society TV has a daily series called Finding Altadena to capture the history of the community and its recovery process, sharing why its history. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, why it's so important.
It's so important. Thank you. It's so important. I was like,
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think about, I always kind of really contemplate on titles for the show. And this title, healing out of the flames into the light, healing fire, because that was part of it, out of the flames into the light. What does that phrase mean to you? What do you grasp in that, considering all that you have gone through with this fire?
I think seeing that we didn't talk about that ahead of time, right?
Mhm.
And in terms of like connections to it, my one of the counseling side of my business is called Inner Healing, Outer Freedom,
Mm. Mm.
and understanding that sometimes that inner healing, not only does it start with us, and we have to bring people in so that we can heal, so that we can be as free as possible outside of here, right?
Mm.
Outside of our head, outside of our heart, outside of, what we say, our nervous gut, or outside of, you get scared and now you just freeze, right? Outside of the freeze. So
Mm.
outside of this fire that has taken away so much, there's a lot of healing that has to come
Yeah.
as a result. I
Mhm.
was able to purchase the land that I lived on for 17 years. And there's no way, I'm convinced, there's no way that that would have happened without this fire, because she had no reason to sell. I kept it. I was there 17 years. I kept it pristine.
That
But yet
is
fire, right?
wow. Look at that.
Right. So I become a homeowner as
Mhm.
a result of what I can call and what people call the most devastating, thing I've ever experienced out of my life. But
Mm.
there is triumph.
Yes, out of the flames there's healing light.
Mm-hmm.
My God, that is phenomenal. So tell that story, please.
So, of course, so, left that house not knowing what I was going to do or where I was going to go. Two hotels. I was in an Airbnb for a month and a half, and I didn't hear from the landlord for almost a month. And I called there, no call back. And at that about the month mark, because I've done quite a bit of media press, and people just kind of finding myself and my family and wanting to tell our story, and we're super appreciative of that, and that of Altadena. And I got connected with a program or an organization called Neighborhood Housing Services. And as they came and just kind of looked at the finances, where are we? My family and I, we're in such different situations. We're like this microcosm of, probably every situation that could happen in Altadena. We've got, our senior whose insurance is, not working out really well. Another sister who is renting and owned a home previously. Me was renting and not being have never owned a home, and so on and so forth. But
Mhm.
with neighborhood housing services, just really looking at home ownership and what promise looks like, and getting back to Altadena, and that's their number one goal, at least for me, is to get me back to Altadena. So then when I finally heard from the landlord, I asked, what is it that you want to do with the property? She says, I don't know. We're not builders. And I just said, okay, no problem. Just remember that you gave me first right of refusal a long time ago,
Mhm.
but and let me know what you want to do. So God said, about 2 weeks later, God said, call again.
Mhm.
And got on the phone and talked to one of the people at the organization. And she says, well, I'll have her call you back. And I said, okay, no problem. So she doesn't call back on time most times. She called me back the next day. And she said, in fact, they were looking to sell the property because they're not builders and that's not what they wanted to do. And I said, okay, does the first right refusal still stand? She said, yes. And she proceeded to say, I'm selling the property for $565,000. Do you have that much money? And I just kind of got a little quiet. And I said, if the property is supposed to be mine, I wouldn't worry about the money.
Come on, girl, speak that.
And she says, so you must have that much money. And I said, again, if it's supposed to be mine, like I prayed for, then I wouldn't worry about the money. And she gave me the realtor's phone number, all that stuff. And then I got off the phone. I said, oh, shoot, what did I just do? What did I just do? And what did I just say? I got bold on my God's promise, right? I got bold.
Didn't
So
tell
then,
her it.
yeah, I got bold. I guess you just got to claim it. So I got on the line and I was talking to the liaison. His name is Don at Neighborhood Housing Services. And I said, Don, she just called me. So $565,000 with a 15-day escrow and all cash.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And I told him that, and he got quiet. And he said, Ishelle, is this what you want? And I said, yes, it is. And he goes, well, let's do it.
Wow.
So neighborhood housing services, just, very similar to what Green Line is doing, what we've heard a lot about Green Line, but NHS, they come in and they're basically land banking. But this, for myself, this is the first time that this has ever been done in this way with a person in mind to do this for. So
Wow.
they've had to write policy
I'm
while
just
this thing is going, because they said we go make sure she gets back home. And I said, you just go on and do it. You do it.
do that.
So yeah. So Matt, they did proof of funds, did all of that different stuff like that, and in 15 days they said the property is yours. And I said, I got a bunch of dirt and rocks, and I love it.
It's your dirt and your rocks, girl.
And my dirt and rocks. And lo and behold, it's a little sprig of lavender growing on that dirt and rocks. I tried to grow lavender for years. And now it's one little sprig, but I'll take it.
But that is all right. It's supposed to be right there for such a time as this. I love that story. And that's also part of the healing fire. Like, out of the flames came this beautiful opportunity. In all the soot and the blackness of it all. And here you get to stand as a homeowner and having a whole fresh start, like a really fresh start in a new way. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. My goodness.
Absolutely. I mean, it's quite amazing. And I'm amazed at my God all the time. And, I say all the time that if people if there's not some underlying faith, some belief, and you don't have to believe how I believe at all. Whatever it is, hold fast to it, because without it, then you're kind of wavering out here and there is no anchor. And as you're waving out here, you know what I mean? You're willing to do almost anything to be and to feel safe.
I'm telling you.
And sometimes you end up doing the wrong thing, because the anchor is not, it's not fortified. So whatever it is that you believe, right? Get really, really clear about it, so that you can hold tight to that and really keep on moving forward.
Yes.
Right. Wow. I was looking at the comments, and Girls Like Me Global asked, she said, 6 months after these horrific January fires, what are the most pertinent needs now, and how can people serve this community and still help? And thank you so much for asking that. I think after time elapses, right, and now you got another tragedy, and praying for everybody in Texas that's impacted by all of that water. Again, another event, that is not a respecter of person. You just don't even worry about it. Everybody, equal opportunity offender.
Yes.
So when we think about what comes next, is the continued support that is needed now. Would be, people that still have not connected with FEMA, people that still are in hotels, that, continue to have a need of permanency. I think right now, the money that, people had is now running out. A voice, right, with the insurance companies, and they've held some rallies on Monday, just talking about insurance and what was needed. But, if there are gift cards that people want to collect so that people don't have to, buy meals, or if they don't have stoves because they're still not, in a stable place, right? The gift cards, those things to the grocery stores, or, I think some of what we understand 6 months later is that you would have taken different things if people told you, or if you understood that you weren't going back.
Right. Ooh, ooh.
Yeah, I would have taken different things. I would have taken the things that make me feel the most pretty.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Because on a day where I'm feeling down and I just want to put on my comfy, sporty, I'm an Adidas kind of girl, my comfy, sporty, tracksuit.
Yeah.
And it also made me feel good, and it made me feel pretty. I left that. And it's not only about those things, but when you get down to it, right, to go and replace everything that was in my makeup bag costs hundreds of dollars.
Oh, absolutely.
Hundreds of dollars. And then you almost feel selfish for doing it, because you know what I mean, you're living pillar to post and you don't really know where your next meal is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the thing that makes you feel, right, together.
Yes.
That would make me present myself really well. So it's figuring out what people love the most and getting them that.
Oh, I love that. So I'm going to say this because now I'm about to cry. Okay. But because I'm a girly girl. And so I get that in such a way that, and those are things that people would not want to even think that they should give to people because it seems frivolous to them or something like that. But to really get down to it and to consider that that's the very reason they need that, because so many people won't think of it and won't consider it. And Michelle, am the president of a Black women's organization. So I'm getting you on a real deep level here right now, right? And so
Yeah.
I am going to do as president is ask my women to bring such gift cards to our meeting this weekend and for the next several meetings, that some Sephora gift cards and some, that kind of thing that really, definitely some groceries. That's important too. But
Well, and imagine this, right? And this is what people don't think about. Um, I got curves, and not a whole lot of curves, but I got enough curves. And I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to make these curves work in clothes. I don't
yes.
have any of those things.
Mm,
So just being able to feel like you can get dressed and feel like you look good.
right. Yes.
I've spent my time trying to figure out how to go get something off of a rack when
Right.
it's not working,
Absolutely.
and you may not have the money to spend on the expensive stuff that you used to have. So I mean, when we talk about like creating a network of individuals that can actually sit with a woman to say, what is it that you need?
Mm-hmm.
And for her to say, I bought this thing from this place. And
Mm,
I would love to be able to go back to that place to buy that thing again, even
absolutely.
though it's seasons away from when you bought it the first time. But it was the only thing that made you feel pretty, that fit, you know what I mean, your bust right, or, your hips right, or, all of that. It's those
Okay.
kinds of things that's the experience that, you know
Mm,
what I mean, I need and want to have.
absolutely.
And I love all of the donations and everything that I got, but it's like my sweet spot and my things, right?
Mhm.
Those are the things.
Yes, I know a woman. I'm going to send you there. I'm going to have a conversation with her. All that and more boutique.
Yeah, I mean, just
And
imagine we all wear fragrances, and
yes,
now we got to wear the one from Rite Aid because that's the only gift card that we got. I don't want to. Oh, okay.
yeah, I understand. I understand. I love it. I
I
think
want the one I had.
yes, yes. Well,
Yeah.
I want to thank Girls Like Me Global. That is our producer. And thank you for that question because that brought forth so much of this. That is so good. Let's see what Alan says. Alan says, I hope we can retain the Black home ownership. The Eaton Fire could become the change maker for the Black population of Altadena. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
so rich. Let's see here. Hey, hometown. Good friend and heart, Kenneth Cunningham. He says, great sharing this. Absolutely. Thank you for tuning in, Toledo. I don't know if I told you this, Ishal. I'm from Toledo, Ohio.
Okay, come on through, Ohio.
Alan says, I hope I can get somebody just co-signed over there, right? I hope I can get Dr. Williams' interview to be a part of capturing how new homeownership is created out of the Eaton Fire. I'm sure she hears you, and we can make
Yeah,
that
I would love to do so.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think one of the things we didn't realize is how many renters were actually in Altadena,
Mm,
because not very many apartment buildings, right? So there's not a whole lot of apartment buildings. So imagine you have all of these renters renting homes.
wow.
They're
Yes.
not in these small, you know what I mean, like spaces and places. And I
It's a
don't, there's nothing
lot.
wrong with small, you know what I mean. But again, like for myself, that lot is almost 8,000 square feet.
Wow.
The house was small on the lot, but there's all of this land and all of these different things to kind of spread out. And this is what people are used to. And I'm paying like almost 3 times as much
Wow.
living in a condo with no land. You know what I mean? Again, part of the difference is 3 times as much at this point.
Wow.
Mhm.
But not for long.
And not for long. And I said again, everything happens for a reason. So this
Yeah.
3 times as much will probably equal that mortgage payment that I'm gonna have to pay. So you talking about God getting me ready,
Getting ready. Come on.
getting me ready, ready.
Listen, we are coming to the end. I'm so sad because this is so good. And thank you so much for your heart and for sharing it with us tonight.
Yeah.
And just before we go, I always like to ask my guests to just take about 20 seconds and leave the nuggets that you want to leave with the Boss Talkers tonight. What nuggets do you want to leave with them?
Let me think. So there's a few sayings that I always say, and I really believe, in this as I've been a professor in school and all this stuff. I tell people all the time, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody cares that the doctor or the few letters and the commas after my name if they don't know that I'm right there with them and they can feel that I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
So I show up as Eshell first. And then I talk about the education and maybe whatever else that comes alongside so that I can actually support a person. But
Mm-hmm.
they meet me. So, even with this fire, you met Eshell, the person that was impacted by the fire in my family. And that's what people saw in that news. They didn't see the Dr. Williams that lost a home that went back to work. You got a bit of that, but not a whole bunch.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter if I can't show up authentically me and that you show up authentically you using every single gift and talent that you have and understanding how immeasurably valuable you actually are.
Mm.
And don't do this alone. Please don't try to do it alone because it's too much for one person to carry.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Thank you. And you spoke about the weight of the caregivers, and this is that, and the weight of just this traumatic incident goes beyond what we could even speak here. So thank you so much. My heart is full. I'm so grateful to you for coming on and just sharing Eshell with us tonight. So
Yes, absolutely. Let's do it again.
let's do it again. And that's what I love is the connection is here now. It's already been birthed and we'll just keep growing it. So yes, indeed.
Perfect.
Stay here with me, Eshell, as we jam out. But please, Boss Talkers, to connect with Dr. Eshell Williams. Her website is there, EshellWilliams.com. Her Instagram is there, Eshell Williams _sweet therapy. And her Facebook is at Eshell Williams. So connect with the good doctor, y'all, and keep the conversation going. We want to see y'all back. And if you want to connect with your girl, you can go to Living Loved Coaching if you need coaching. You can go to Living Loved Healing if you need therapy and healing. Find me on Instagram at Living Loved Healing, Facebook the same. And we have a nonprofit where we are providing complimentary therapy services to survivors of the fires. And so that's at www.wjbcenter.com. We'll see you next week, y'all.